This is the Ordinary Business Podcast for business owners who want honest conversations, a lean business, and an extraordinary life on their own terms.
Hello, friends. We are talking about, as you can see in the podcast title, juggling preschool and business and kind of how I am managing that right now. And I also just want to be very upfront. This is still very much I'm figuring this out. I'm in the thick of it right now. This is not a look at my perfect system. and or this is what I did 5 years ago when I was balancing this. This is a real life when you don't have a huge team to just manage everything, and you're a one-to-one service provider. And so I just want to kind of share, yes, the logistics, but also some of my mindset around these decisions. Should be your mindset. And I am very open to other ideas, or if you want to share with me what you do, I would love to hear from you. So feel free to DM me. I do want to give some context real quick, just because I think that helps set the stage. Because often we hear people talking about well, this is how I juggled it all, and you don't know the full backstory and everything. So for context, I was in my business full time 7 years before I had my daughter. So I was very solid in the business, had systems and workflows, and was used to my schedule and that kind of thing. And so, I wasn't having to figure out oh, okay, I'm 2 years into this business and now how do I figure this out? It was just a matter of this is another layer of complexity, but luckily had a very solid foundation. So I think that's important context to it. And then once my daughter was born, I took a maternity leave for a few months, which I'm very thankful that I was able to pay myself to do that and fully disconnect from business. And then when she was 4 or 5 months old, she started at daycare. Luckily, my husband's employer offered daycare to employees. Now, it wasn't free. We did have to pay, but it was much, much cheaper than other local daycares in the area. And obviously it was right there at his work. So it was easy for drop off and pick up and that kind of thing. So I used to joke, because he always did pick up and drop off, that the first year or two of her being here, it really didn't feel like our lives changed that much, especially my work life, because my husband had the same exact schedule that he did before she was born and kept that same schedule of when he left for work and when he came home from work. And so I was still working the same full days. And so to be quite honest, when I saw moms on social media talking about the juggle and how are you getting everything done, I felt like I didn't fit into that conversation because I wasn't having to juggle everything because my daughter was in daycare. That has since changed. It was a much easier transition for me. And I'm very, very privileged to be able to say that. Now, on a personal note, I don't have a mom. My mom passed back in 2014, and I don't have family close by. So that transition was tough. So there was a whole other shift that had to happen personally, but on the business side, it was a fairly easy transition. It was yeah, okay, I can do this. But it changed. That changed. We ended up moving. Eventually, I started doing daycare pickup, which was not that big of a deal. Then my daughter started pre-K. And when she started pre-K, when we first started looking at the aftercare option, obviously, It's an additional charge because your child is there longer. This episode is sponsored by Leah Bryant. Do you have a podcast that isn't being found by the right audience? Leah helps podcasters with her Get Found audit, a deep dive into your show's discoverability so you can start attracting the right listeners. Head to leahbryantco.com/getfound and use coupon code ORDINARY to get started. I had the mindset of, okay, well, if she's not going to aftercare, how many hours less am I going to be able to work? How is that going to affect how many projects I can take on? How will that affect my overall revenue? And when I looked at that compared to like, oh, if I just pay the extra few $100s, I can make that up in the business. Like if I compare my quote unquote hourly rate, not that I do hourly work, and compare that to the cost, I actually can make more. I can make up the difference compared to like if she were home. Now, that is, again, that's a privilege for me to be able to do that, to say that, to be in a place that I feel comfortable to just be like, oh yeah, I can just make more. I can try to get an extra client here or there. I can, I absolutely realize that is a privilege to be able to say that. And I also know that there are moms out there who would be like, no, I don't want to put her in aftercare, not even for money, but maybe you just want that time with your children, whatever it is. And that is absolutely fine. I think that's the beauty of owning our own business. We can choose whether we want to bring the kids home early or be able to just pull in some extra cash to pay for extra things. So for me, it was just reframing kind of almost like that the aftercare was a business expense. Not that it was. My business wasn't paying for it, but that's kind of how I looked at it. And I am the breadwinner. And so taking that into consideration, that was important. So that's how we decided to keep her in aftercare, which again gave me a longer work day. Then things really changed. Basically this past Christmas, my daughter changed to a different preschool that does not offer aftercare. So that really changed my schedule. And now I'm like, oh, okay, yes, now I'm understanding the juggle that I was not having to understand or deal with when she was born. So husband still does drop off. So I start work literally at like 7:30, 7:45 in the morning. And then I leave my house at 2 p.m. to pick her up. But for context, I'm sitting in the car pickup line for an hour. I'm team sit in the pickup line and work. I know a lot of parents are like, oh, I try to be dead last so I can work more at home and then like not have to wait in the line. I tried that and my anxiety did not like it. I felt like I was late and rushed and I was like, I don't want to do this to my nervous system every day. So it was a very deliberate decision for me to go sit in the car pickup line for an hour, but I actually kind of enjoy it in a weird way. I don't know. Enjoy might be too strong of a word, but I have a hotspot on my phone. And so I literally just take my laptop and a snack and a drink and I go sit. I'm usually second in line, which is bananas that someone beats me being there an hour early. And I just respond to emails. Sometimes I edit podcasts. I work on content. There's plenty of things for me to do from my laptop. I've also even kind of started eating lunch earlier so that I feel like I have a longer stretch between lunch and leaving instead of like, oh, okay, well, now I have 45 minutes, it feels like, to work. And so I eat lunch and then I try in that kind of 2-hour span to not do a lot of content or emails or anything because I'm like, I will do this in the car pickup line. That's what I'll do. And so that's kind of how I've adjusted that. And it is definitely still an adjustment. It feels like my day is very fragmented. And luckily, my brain is mostly okay with that. It's not too difficult for me to kind of like stop, drive, okay, now start working again. But it does feel like I have multiple kind of like deadlines because I'm like, okay, I can work until this time and then go pick her up. And then the other thing that I've done is I found a babysitter in my neighborhood. She's a high school student who's willing to come over a few days a week and play with my daughter for another hour and a half so I can get some more work done. And so that's been super helpful, but it's only an hour and a half. So it gives me a little bit of time. I usually come back in and like spend that hour and a half doing some more client work, getting to another stopping point, that kind of thing, since I had like kind of a content break. So I'm noticing some trends in like how I work, which I think is helping kind of my brain switch into like, okay, now it's design mode, now it's client mode, those kinds of things. But it's just, learning to be flexible and kind of adapt and adjust to this. And what's interesting as I was thinking about sharing kind of this behind the scenes look is how, in the online business space, we talk a lot about flexibility and working for ourselves and working from wherever and that kind of thing. And I always used to think of flexibility as like, oh, I can work from anywhere. So I can just book a little retreat with my friends and, fly somewhere and work there for a few days. Or I'm flexible. I can go get lunch with friends, go to the park and go for a walk. And while those things are still true to a certain extent, it's not the primary way I think of flexibility anymore, because now I think of flexibility as, yes, I can be there to pick up my daughter. I can then take her to gymnastics. And like yesterday was leave the house at 2, go pick her up, come home, change. We had like 15 minutes and then we went to gymnastics. So there was no working for another hour and a half after the school pickup yesterday because we had gymnastics. But I now think of flexibility as like, I have the flexibility to move my day around and work when I need to, and I'm willing to take those trade-offs. So, like some other examples of kind of things that I've moved around, I, for the longest time, have been like a morning workout person, like at the gym at 5 or 6 a.m. And then even with my daughter when she was younger, that was what we did. Earlier this year, when she started pre-K, my husband and I tested out alternating workout days. And then I was like, I really miss going to the gym every day. So I'm going to go work out after you leave for work. And so we did that. And it was okay. But then with her moving schools and me now having to stop at 2:00, I was like, that's not really going to work. Because now I feel like I have even less time when I'm not starting work until 10 a.m. and then having to stop at 2 feels really rushed. And so I'm now back to just alternating days at the gym. Something else I used to really try and be good about, like I have call days, like I only do calls on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, or I can't do only one day a week because I have so many calls that I have to squeeze in. I used to never do calls on Mondays or Fridays because I really don't even work Fridays, or I try not to. I've had to start doing a few calls here and there on Mondays and Fridays. Now, I'm not always keeping those open, but it's something I'm having to kind of let happen if I need to. And same with, I just mentioned, like I don't usually work Fridays. My husband has not worked Fridays for 10 years. And when he stopped working Fridays, I stopped working Fridays. Now I'm kind of working a little bit on Fridays, but that's something I'm being a little bit flexible about. And so it's just sometimes the flexibility is also, hey, I went to school pickup and gymnastics. Now maybe I need to break out my laptop at 7:30 p.m. and work for an hour since I left the office earlier. And I know there are people out there, in the online business space who would be like, this is why you need a team and this is why one-to-one is not scalable. But this is the work that I love. This is the way I've set up my business. I do not want to scale to an agency. I don't want to stop working one-to-one. And so I'm willing to have that trade-off of being able to take my daughter to gymnastics and let her have that experience if it means I need to work for an hour on Tuesday evenings sometimes. And again, that's not the case every week. Sometimes I don't need to. And I can't do it every night because I have book club and other things that I go to during the week. So it's like I literally can't do that every night. And so flexibility for me is more about the trade-offs and just being flexible. It's almost like retraining my own brain, because for so long before becoming a parent, I was so almost like strict with like boundaries and like, no, you should not work in the evenings. You need to work your hours and like give your brain a break. And while I still believe, yes, you should give yourself a break and like disconnect from work, if you are more productive on Saturdays because you have childcare and less people in your inbox, like then work on a Saturday. That's the beauty of us owning our own businesses, that we get to choose what times work for us and our family. For me, it's becoming like more open-handed with business and being flexible and almost treating it as more of an experiment and not so rigid. And it's kind of like just testing out what feels good, what works for me. So this is hopefully helpful just to see a little perspective and insight into how I juggled things, my mindset. I know there wasn't a clear, like, specific takeaway here, but I think I would just remind you that sometimes flexibility doesn't always mean it's easy either. Like, it doesn't have to mean it's easy just because you're being flexible. I would remind you that systems aren't permanent. Sometimes they're seasonal. Sometimes the systems and the workflows need changing. And honestly, just a reminder that like you're not failing if what used to work doesn't work anymore. Especially if something changed in your life, you moved, you had a kid, you changed the style of your business or the type of work you do. Like, we have to change. And sometimes I feel like in the online business space, there's a lot of like, this is what works and you have to do it. And that's just not the case. So hopefully this was at least a little bit helpful, or you don't feel alone trying to juggle all the things, whether it's kids or elderly parents or whatever it is. But if you have anything you'd like to share, I would love to hear from you. You can DM me on Instagram at The Ordinary Business. But otherwise, I will see you all in the next episode.